My personal view as a psychic slash medium, I will never, ever, 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 ever approach anyone in public. But it's where you're getting a physical reaction to energetic information. And that is obviously what is occurring here. It's a very physical reaction to energetic information. It almost made me feel like I was reading people's minds. It's a violation of consent, and that's not super great. Hello, and welcome back to my Spiritual Conundrum series. I still might change the name on that, but we're going to kind of roll with it right now until, I don't know, I get better messages or until I feel aligned with one of the ones that are you guys suggested on the last video, which I really appreciate the suggestions, by the way. Thank you so much for those. If you are new here, hello, I am Emily. I'm a professional psychic activator, and historical channel or historical medium. I've been doing this for like my whole life, really, but for like professionally for like 15 years. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff that I haven't even talked about publicly. I've seen a lot of stuff that I have talked about publicly. The weird is where I live. And as such, with the weird, basically what I am doing on this series is I have gone to Reddit and I have found some of the weirdest, funkiest, craziest spiritual situations that people have found them in. And I'm going to read some of them to you and give my advice as a professional, as well as channel in my guides and give their advice if they have anything to say on it or have an opinion from kind of the other side on what that person should do or what you could do if you find yourself in a similar situation. Honestly, it's fun. It's chill. We're just kind of vibing with it. It gives me something to talk at and really gives you some information and perspective, hopefully. Yeah, I really dig it. And I am looking to have like guests on this in the future, but right now I'm just vibing, honestly, and just having a good time because it's fun and it's different and it's outside of just education stuff. We get to get funky and weird. So without further ado, let's jump into our first story, shall we? This story comes from our psychic about 7 days ago, and it's titled Thoughts? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark. My husband and I went to dinner with our 9-month-old daughter tonight, and blah, 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 blah. We're going to try that again. My husband and I went to dinner with our 9-month-old tonight, and behind us was what seemed to be a girl in her 20s. My husband initially thought she was someone we knew and awkwardly waved, then apologized when he realized it wasn't who he thought she was. She was friendly and smiley towards our daughter throughout dinner. She met with a friend by the time we were leaving. My husband made his way to the front of the restaurant with our daughter as I gathered our stuff to leave. She frantically got up in front of me and lowered her tone to me to tell me that the man I was with would get very sick within the next few years and that he needs to get tested. I asked when, and she said when she, my daughter, was about 6. At first she was speaking so fast she was almost mumbling and stating that she knows this is strange. At least I think that's what she was trying to say before she was more clear and made those statements. I have never heard of a psychic or medium sharing news like this. This was also just very unsettling to experience, and I'm wondering what people in this group would take from this experience. Okay, so here's a couple different things. First of all, my personal view as a psychic slash medium, I will never, ever, 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 ever approach anyone in public. Now, as far as what the heck this was, if someone comes up and says this to you, you do not have to believe it without validation. Like, let me just start there. You can always, 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 always ask your guides for validation for an experience like this. If someone approaches you in public and gives you a prediction, or even if you pay for a reading and you get a prediction from a psychic, or someone tells you that something negative is going to happen in that way, and you're like, is that the case? You do not have to blindly trust that thing in any way. You absolutely can ask your guides and be like, hey guides, is this a thing? Can you please validate the information that I just received from this woman and tell me if that is actually the case? That's totally acceptable. That's totally fine to do. Blind trust is never a requirement in spirituality. If anything, if someone's saying you have to trust in some sort of spiritual thing, like that's a requirement, I would reject that narrative and probably move away from whatever that person was teaching, because that is eliminating your ability to learn and grow at your own pace. Now, with something like this, however, or if someone tells you something bad in a reading, and if you do get that validation, or maybe you really don't want that to happen, the future, especially the future so far ahead, is incredibly mutable. It's incredibly, incredibly mutable. Basically what that means is you can manifest things in sooner or later. You can move timelines. You can shift stuff around. You can move stuff out of the way. That does not have to be the future. So that is just like my general disclaimer for everything that was said here. I will say it is a little interesting that the woman was like mumbling to her and like had a harder time before like the clearer messages got out. And I do wonder if there is some mental health stuff at play that was happening with this situation, because though I am heavily a believer in like absolutely believing in trusting in the universe and what comes through. Mental health is an essential part of that in order to do it in the way that's highest and best for everyone and to make sure there's not translation issues. And I am wondering, with just the way that she describes this person, if there's maybe a mental health component, because it does seem a little bit funky. That being said, if we're talking about it on like a soul connection level, because obviously the husband thought that he recognized this person and like waved at this person, that could very well mean that there is some sort of soul connection thing there. It could be like a guide in human form for a second. I've had multiple experiences like this, but one that stands out in my mind where something very similar to this sort of happened to me. This was before I really went through my spiritual reawakening. So just like a tiny little bit of background on me. I was doing psychic readings and things for people, even starting as early as like when I was 16 years old. I have been in touch with these gifts for a very long time. However, during my very abusive relationship in my early 20s, I didn't use my gifts professionally. They were just kind of around. It's very hard to be psychic when you're in fight or flight all the time. But anyway, I really needed a sign. I needed a shove. I needed a reason to leave. And I was selling cars at the time. Yes, I used to sell cars. Was I good at it? No. Was I really good at talking to people? Yes. Did they buy the cars from me? No. Why? Because I didn't know anything about cars. I was just there to vibe. Anyway, beside the point. So I was working at this car dealership at the time. And at the car dealership, we had this woman come in and she was in a very similar situation to me, but further along. She was in a very abusive situation. She was really struggling. She needed a car to get out of the state. That was her whole thing. And she had someone to co-sign for her. So we called this person and she was a little bit unstable, and that was obviously reasonable for the situation that she was in. But she called this person called us back, was like, I'll totally co-sign for her. And she was like, awesome. But before she filled out the paperwork, she left and went down the street. 2 or 3 days later, she finally came back, and I was so relieved because I had kept all her stuff that she had left with me, like, because she had left a bunch of stuff. Obviously she was really disturbed. I was really afraid for her and her well-being. The cops in the town I was in really didn't give a shit. So she finally came back and I was like, oh my God, yay. Like, the person called us back. He will co-sign this car for you. Like, let's go do this paperwork. And she just looked at me and she was just like, no, I can't do this paperwork. Thanks for your help. Like, thanks for my bus pass back. And she just kind of left and I never really saw her again. And that was a very similar situation to me because that completely catalyzed a lot of stuff for my life. And I've channeled back on her later. And she, in that moment, the reason she came to the dealership, the whole thing was to activate me into taking the steps I needed to leave my abusive ex, because I saw for the first time where my life was leading and I was terrified. So that there's other things that happened with leaving my abusive ex, but that feels very similar as far as context of like a guide made physical for the purpose of helping a person along. That's what I recognize in this, is that could potentially be the experience. And I really wonder, and I'm going to look here and see if there's additional comments from OP, if he has gotten tested or if he plans to get tested for anything, or if maybe the woman told him what to get tested for, because I'm not 100% sure if they figured that out or if she said anything other than just like, go get tested. He's going to get sick and die by the time that your daughter's 6. I would still, if this were me in my situation, someone approached me that way, I'd of course ask my guides. I'd try to get like validation that I needed, but then I would also genuinely get tested, mostly because I am a better safe than sorry person. And whatever the situation was, even if that person wasn't particularly stable, maybe they were translating wrong, whatever it is, I would still go get my husband tested in that case. Because why not? Why not? And if it proved to be right, I would just thank my gods, yes, my deities, I guess, as well as my guides, as well as everyone else who's looking out for me, sending that person to me, as I did with the previous situation. So that's where I would go with that. Let's see what comments we have, and I'll see if my guides have anything to say. Let's see. Top comment. I'll add a curveball into the mix. Take heed of what this woman said. Your husband has precognition of him knowing her. Secondly, you were at dinner considering the countless combinations of people who could have been at dinner that night in your town/city. And it's that woman who came to see things is sitting right next to you. Strange, isn't it? Then she communicates with you when the timing was right, when your husband walks away from the table. She delivered you a message. You might want to take stock and get your man checked. This is how messengers work. Yeah, I mean, I think that's valid. And like I said, that's a top comment. It's valid enough. Like, I would definitely go in, and it wouldn't hurt to do blood work and see what happens, especially since it seems like the woman didn't actually ask for anything in return. It wasn't like she was trying to pull you in or sell you something or like get you to talk to her or anything. Like, it feels like she was, if anything, like really embarrassed about communicating the message. I don't know. I'm not fully tuning into the energy, but Never hurts to get tested, which is a bunch of the other comments say that as well. Someone else said, like, this has happened to me a few times in my life. It's often who you least expect. I met an engineer who had worked for SpaceX and Google. He knew many things about me without me telling him anything and admitted he can do this with anyone. That's a little concerning. Met a woman while hiking who said Spirit was telling her to recommend certain books to me. They were indeed very helpful to me given what I was going through at the time. I think a lot of people have intuitive gifts, and it's often the most unsuspecting individuals. What I will also say, and I'm just going to throw this out there, it's also sometimes you communicating with the universe communicating through other people to you to give you what you need to take the next steps to help you see things. And I think everything can be seen as an intuitive lead if you're doing it with the balance of mental health. And I do think that that's a possibility. The balance of mental health is like the huge component of that, though. Like, that is a huge part of it, so that you're not like going in like everything's talking to me and like losing your grip here on being a human. But I do think that there's a way to find a lot of synchronicity and validation and intuitive pull in most anything that is leading you forward. And this seems like it would be a leading you forward. I'm trying to see if OP commented anymore, but I don't think that they did. Well, there's a couple of people that are really, really upset about the fact that someone approached her, which, as I said in the beginning, I am too. I think it's a violation of consent. And that's yucky, whether or not you choose to take it seriously. It's a violation of consent, and that's not super great. But again, it doesn't hurt to get physical. It doesn't look like the OP commented again. So yeah, let me see what my guides... I giggle because for the most part, my guides are like, yeah, hands off on this one. I have had the request that they not send humans to me in this manner. So for me, I've also created that boundary with my guides, which is pretty funny that they're like, yeah, no, like, we're not sending that to you. That's not going to happen. I will say Hermes is really into messenger stuff. Hermes is one of my guides. I roll my eyes because there's a long saga there. Look at previous videos. You'll understand, both on TikTok and on here. We have a long history, me and the Hermes. But as far as the messenger goes, he thinks it was probably an actual messenger and that the person should get their husband checked. So that's at least helpful. Thank you, Hermes. Everybody else is kind of side-eyeing me there. So, okay, cool. Moving on. Let's go to our next story. All right. The next one also posted to r/psychic. It is titled Weird Feeling Around Old Furniture and or Old Places. All right. Ready? Here we go. So from a very early age, very often when I was around old furniture or when visiting some they spelled this wrong, but antiquary store. Yeah, I'm just going to say antique store. I don't know why they put it that way. You know, being a little kid, having no choice but to follow your mom, shopping around old museums, old houses, visiting a friend of my parents and whatnot. Sometimes I would wander around, opening a door that leads to a dusty closet or a hallway, and I could sometimes get that weird feeling, an almost familiar feeling, yet chilly. I would let it happen to me and suddenly feel some kind of wave of energy go through my body. When it happened, the experiences were lasting maybe for a second, tops. I could describe the feeling as if, in a fraction of a second, I had a small electric shock going through my body, chilling my skin, and a small ear ringing. Overwhelming for a split second, then coming back to myself. Sometimes it would repeat itself 2 to 3 times in a row, back to back, sometimes just happening once. Never happened anywhere else but around old places or old furniture. Now, I really don't get that feeling anymore since, being a grown-up, I decide where I go, and I don't really visit those types of places. What could it be, and what do you make of this? I love this situation. Okay, so this is actually a really wonderful description of something that happened very often to me when I was a really little kid that I later understood was actually like a clairsentient, claircognizant response to energy that I was feeling. And I know this happens for a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people that have very similar responses. A couple different things could be going on here. I'm going to start with like what I think is most likely and kind of like work to what I think is least likely for this particular situation. What I think is most likely is the person is actually experiencing energy that is connected to that place or that object and feeling that energy in a very clairsentient way. Clairsentience is where you get a physical response to energetic information. There's 8 different clairs. That's a different video. I have a couple of those on this YouTube if you want to go check them out. But it's where you're getting a physical reaction to energetic information. And that is obviously what is occurring here. It's a very physical reaction to energetic information. I think if this person actually went back to going to more old places, they would start to be able to distinguish in their adulthood what information they're actually perceiving based on the spaces that they're in. Child them, though, just was able to feel the physical feelings because they probably didn't have the words or understanding to put words to those feelings and understand exactly what energy they were feeling. Oftentimes, this type of stuff, this clairsentient type of stuff, works in tandem with something called claircognizance. Claircognizance is the just knowing psychic ability where you just know stuff out of nowhere, like poofity poof, there it is. Oftentimes the claircognizant will come in to back up the clairsentience or vice versa. And in this situation, I would really, if this person was in a reading with me, I would like deeply encourage them to go try this in a safe and controlled environment, like a place where they feel really safe, even if it is old, or a museum where they know stuff is like kind of behind the cases, something like that, and try to see what pings they get from the physical response that they receive. When I was a little kid, I had very similar feelings, and it was really hard for me to put those into words. I was able to see and interact with guides and spirits. I grew up very much in the forest and could see fairies and all sorts of things like that with my physical eyes. I've always been able to see energy with my physical eyes. It's just like an overlay of everything in the world. I can only pull it apart if I really focus on it, or if it's totally dark, then I just see the energy imprint of everything. Or I can look at like the energy now, understanding what it is. But for a long time, it was really difficult. And then I had a lot of clairsentience, a lot of claircognizance, a lot of clairvoyance, all coming in. Clairvoyance is clear sight. And it would feel very similar to this if I was around a spirit or around a lot of adults whose guides were all talking. It almost made me feel like I was reading people's minds. I know now I wasn't, but I had a perpetual fear of that growing up because I thought everyone could read my mind since I thought I was reading their minds. Obviously I wasn't. I was just feeling the energy. And I think it's something like that where you're really feeling the energy there. So that's what I think is probably most likely. Second thing, which I would consider as like second most likely, would be a ghost. I'm wondering if the OP actually, if they went through those spaces and only got the feeling in certain places, if they were actually feeling a ghost presence there. I think that's pretty likely. The thing is, though, with it being this consistent and only in old places, that's where I'm like hesitant, because ghosts aren't only in old places. Ghosts abound in other locations, and that is just a thing. So it could be that too, potentially. Could be a ghost trying to poke this person that they now see can see them, which can totally happen, and that could be a chance of what it is. I doubt it, and if it is a ghost thing, it's kind of weird with the electric shock piece. I wonder if they're kind of pulling, the ghost is kind of pulling off of their energy a little bit, which definitely could happen, potentially. That is also kind of likely. It's not super likely, but kind of likely. The third option, which I think is probably the least likely option, is I think maybe there's a past life connection thing there, and they're getting waves of memory energy, not necessarily associated with like the specific old place or the specific old piece of furniture, but more associated with like something that reminds them of something from a past life, if that makes sense. So let's say this person walks into an old house and they're walking through, and then maybe they stop in front of this staircase and they get that feeling, and maybe that feeling is like a nostalgic almost energy feeling, trying to be like, yo, look at this. This staircase reminds you of your childhood home from 4 lives ago. Do you feel a pull here? Feel that connection, lean in. So that's also a possibility. All of those are worth investigating. If something like this happens to you, sorry, a tractor was driving by. We're doing construction on our street. Isn't that great? Anyway, if something like this were to happen with you, if you have this type of feeling or reaction, you don't really know what it is, you can absolutely investigate that. That's not too hard to do. Investigating it basically means like when you have this feeling, start asking it questions. What do I know about this feeling? What energy am I sensing? What do I just know? What do I see? What do I sense? What do I feel? Do I smell? Do I know? Go through all of your senses. Ask your guides. Be like, okay, I got this feeling. What is it you're trying to get my attention for? What is this energy trying to do? It could potentially also be a validation from your guides. I didn't include that with this as far as like the categories, the 1, 2, 3 goes, purely because it is so specific to location. But if you are getting those feelings just without a specific location or a specific trigger, sometimes it is your guides being like, pokety poke poke. Pay attention to me, or good job, you just did awesome, or remember, you're not doing this by yourself. So those are the things that I would kind of pay attention to. I will say, according to Boris is my dragon guide. He is with me all the time. He is wonderful. I adore him. He said that the person is just trying to suppress their magical abilities, and unfortunately around old places, that is harder to do. So the person is suppressing their spiritual energy. I don't know if there's religious trauma or what, just going off of what Boris is saying, but in older places where there's more activated energy, it's harder for the person to do that. So it feels like the energy is like trying to break in to the person's space, to OP space. Thanks, Boris. That's really valuable, dude. I appreciate that thing. He rolled his eyes and kind of like, hoof, fluffed himself up about that one. Yeah, so let's see what some comments say. I want to see if OP commented again. I think they did. So let's see here. Oh, OP commented a couple different times. Okay, so this is the first comment. Sounds like psychometry, where you should practice reading objects to see what you can pick up from them. Yeah, exactly. It's just object channeling. This is a good way to develop your psychic ability. It can be very overwhelming to visit museums or live in old places if you can read objects because they are linked to information. A good indicator is if you wear some clothing and you have a stressful time. You try to wear them again and you will feel stressed for no reason, etc. Oh, they're trying to say if you like go get some old clothing and you put it on and hold stress within it or like an emotion within it. If you feel that emotion when you put it on, take it off, see if it goes away, try it on again. You will try to wear them again, you will feel stressed for no reason, etc. Or people who randomly feel the need to let go of all of their stuff and start again also likely can read objects. I disagree with that. Commenter, super disagree with that. Feeling a pain is, that last sentence is incoherent. So there's Reddit for you. I disagree with that, the last little piece there that was coherent, where they said like people who like let go of all of their stuff also might likely have object channeling. That could be a thing, but also I think humans inherently change and go through phases. We attribute phases to little kids, but adults go through phases too, and sometimes you just want to like get rid of everything because it represents old parts of yourself that you have already healed and integrated that you don't need to have around you all the time, or that you have changed and evolved as a human and therefore need to like have your space reflect you. So that's one kind of caveat I'd add to that comment. OP says, yes, it does help. It's an avenue I did not even think of. I will definitely look into it. Thank you. Would you know if an object, energy / information could include a person's aura as well? Object channeling is essentially the concept of channeling into the object's consciousness and talking to that consciousness and going to understand that consciousness. So it can include kind of like aura reading, but I would not include that in like the object channeling space because auras are a little bit different and we could do a whole video just on auras. Let me know if you want that. I can do an aura video. I see them very clearly, very, very clearly. But that is, I guess, technically something that could help. I just think it's more, personally, what I would say is I highly doubt that it is specific object channeling based or specific place based unless they're absorbing that energetic information from the beginning. I think it's them, whenever an energetic hit comes in, this is how they're processing it. That would be my guess. Cool. Next story. What? Angles, shifts, changes. Let's do this. Okay, next story. Okay, so I have two different options for this next story. One I'm going to keep for my lovely Patreon peeps. If you'd like to join the Patreon and hear me respond to one of these stories, whichever one I feel is going to be best, please go ahead and check out that below. There's a tier for you to join that. Plus, there's tons of other perks where you can work with me in like a once a month Q&A sort of mentoring session. There's monthly meditations. There's bonus videos. There's all sorts of stuff. Oh, hello, Callum. You're a good boy. Anyway, so that is available on, oh, and he's gone. How dare someone walk past the door. That is available on my Patreon. So I will keep one of these video responses for my Patreon only content. I would love for you to join me over there and you can see this video response. But these are the two different ones that we have. I'm just going to kind of read the title a little bit about them and then see what my guides say as far as which one they want me to do. The first one, I realize my clairsentience makes watching shows 10 times better. And this one is a little interesting because I think there's some gray area of whether or not they should be doing this. It's a little touchy. The second option is feeling a ring on the ring finger of my left hand. And this is literally a story about like actually physically feeling like there is a ring attached to them when there is not. So, guide team, what do we think? Okay. Pretty clear validation that they want me to do the Clairsentience one, mostly because it's talking a little bit more about physical feeling senses, and that is kind of like the theme, I guess, of today's video. But I think it's a really important conversation to have. Also, they have opinions on this one very significantly on how to use it in a meaningful way. Also, apologists chimed in on how the gods use it. So we're gonna do this one. This story is also on Our Psychic. And again, if you wanted to get the other story, head to the Patreon, link below. Also, while you're down there, if you want to like this video and like subscribe to my channel and like do all of the thingies and the little ringy bell, that would be nifty. I would love that. It would allow me the space to continue doing this for everybody, forever. Okay, continuing. Again, the title, Realizing My Clairsentience Makes Watching Shows 10 Times Better. I was watching a talent show today, bored out of my mind. Dude, feel ya. Talent shows, especially kid talent shows, though very cute, excruciating. They go on the level of hell that is exclusively composed of child's birthday parties in the DMV. Anyway, bored out of my mind, so I randomly decided to focus on the performer's energy, and I could feel their adrenaline doing stunts. It genuinely felt like I was doing it with them. So exhilarating, like a roller coaster. I also tapped into some dancers' energy and could feel their happiness shining from the audience attention. It backfired a bit, not surprised, when there was a really uncomfortable stunt that looked painful. I tried my best not to tap into their energy. I also tried to stay grounded throughout. I also felt excited because the audience cheering. I'm telling you though, if I watched that show alone without this ability, I'd fall asleep. Now, it makes sense why I'm buzzing with energy, practically bouncing off the walls like in a manic episode after nights out or after a concert. I probably absorbed everyone's energy and never realized. I thought I was an extrovert because of that, but now I'm realizing I only get that from crowds. And it also depends on the crowd because I cry passing by protests. I'm still new to Clairsentience, so if anyone has any similar stories to add, please let me know. I knew people get affected by crowds, but I never noticed it in myself. This was from 16 days ago. Okay. All right, we're going to talk about a couple different things in association with this story. First and foremost, don't do this. Please, again, it goes off of like a consent issue, right? Like you are now tapping into someone else's energy and like diving in there and like linking your two energies together essentially without their consent. Now, there is a way to do this where you can basically tap into the energy that they're giving off, not necessarily their energy, but from the way OP writes this and their lack of awareness around where their energy ends and where someone else's energy begins, they don't know how to do that with any real skill or competence in a way that I feel doesn't violate other people's boundaries. It seems violating to me. It really does. And I don't like that. Now, here's the thing. If you have clairsentience, which is clear physical feeling, it is the psychic sense of pulling in physical feeling and absorbing energetic information that way. P.S. I do have a free exercise on my website. I'll link that below too. It's just emilydexterpsychic.com, where you can figure out what your strongest psychic senses are of the 8. But just if you're wondering like, ooh, do I have that? You can figure it out. It's totally free. It's just for you. Everyone has them, by the way. You do have a psychic sense. You probably have multiple and they do combine, and it's very helpful to know which ones are yours. Here's the thing though, because they're absorbing it very physically and feeling it physically along with the person, I think they're diving into that person's energy and like really, really absorbing some of it. And they're saying they're doing it in a grounded way, but I would be concerned to know if they're actually clearing out that energy after the fact, if they're sending that energy back to the person, if they were depriving that person of any of the energy. And I wonder if they're actually grounding during it or if they're just doing it in a grounded way, which I don't. He's like, the OP said I tried to stay grounded throughout, which like, I don't really know what that, are they trying to like plant the energy there? I don't know. If you wanted to experience a show like this, what I would do is I would make sure your energy is very grounded. I do have tips on that everywhere, but ground your energy down. This is one of the easiest ways to do that. Ground that energy in, and then just let your energy be open to the waves of energy coming off of another person. Just let it be open for that and see what you feel from that. Trying to make it very specific to the direction of the person on the stage or the direction of the person next to you, just absorbing what they're already sending out. The thing with this though, is if you don't clear your energy afterwards, it can actually make you sick. Like genuinely real human physical sick, not just like spirit sick, like real sick, because you are now absorbing and taking things in wide open. You could be absorbing negative entities, psychic attack, energy vampire stuff. Like you could be absorbing all sorts of stuff that you don't necessarily want because you're just flinging open the doors. So if you can do it kind of directed and make sure you clear your energy afterwards very significantly, you could potentially do this in a real and meaningful way. What it feels like from this OP is that they don't have a lot of energy or spiritual hygiene going on. And because of that, they're absorbing a lot of energy from crowds and not realizing it or not managing it. And to the point where the energy feels like a manic episode, you need to maybe clear your energy a little bit. You can vibe off of it for a little while, but you need to maybe clear part of your energy or do some grounding, sit on the ground, use the energy like through channeling or journaling and getting that energy out, because it's not really healthy for us to continually absorb everyone else's energy without clearing that out at the same time. That being said, is it healthy to do this and engage in this way? It definitely can be. You can totally allow yourself to feel that way if you do it with training and respect for other people's boundaries. Other thing I want to mention on this though, you can do this in a much more, look at him, he's back. Good boy. You can do this in a much more aligned way if you want to actually do it for like TV shows you're watching, like actual shows like that you're watching, because then the person isn't physically there. You're like basically pulling the energy from a light memory of the person, which is what a film TV thing is. So you can also do it that way. That is a lot more tapping into something that's not going to hurt either of you, because there's some energy captured. You're tapping into the energy. You're feeling that energy out. So I would play with it in that way first before you do it in a physical in-person sense. When people are really sensitive to energy, when they absorb a lot of energy from other people, I never, ever, ever am like, cut that off. You need to stop doing that. Because I do think it's a healthy and powerful thing to be able to do. I always just say you need to do it in ways that are aligned with you, that are healthy for you, and that are also not harming others' energy space. Because oftentimes if you absorb as much energy as this OP is talking about absorbing, you get really overwhelmed really quickly. You get really drained really quickly. There'll be an up and then there'll be a crash. It's a bunch, and it makes it really hard to figure out what you're feeling versus what other people are feeling. So just doing this clear is really, really important. Okay, so Apollo chimed in when I decided to read this story because he wanted to talk about how he basically said, that sounds like some God shit. And I was like, what do you mean? And it does. It sounds like some deity stuff. So a lot of times deities will experience feelings through humans because they're not incarnated here. It happens a lot, especially with humans who are wide open and don't maybe have like an actual healthy relationship with the deity. That deity will invade some boundaries. That spirit will invade some spiritual boundaries of that person to feel what the person is feeling, to get the person's experience, because the deity isn't here in physical form anymore. That definitely totally happens back in ancient times. It's also why deities sometimes banged it out with everything and everyone. I was trying to say that in like an appropriate for YouTube sort of way, but it's like part of the reason they like banged it out is because they were able to absorb that energy from the person and experience stuff through their eyes for a while, and that was a little addictive for them. So that's his opinion on it. He's not a fan of this entire situation. I am a fan-ish. It depends on how well the person is doing it. Let's see what OP says. I hope this doesn't encourage other people to do this without proper hygiene in place. Okay, top comment. I've just noticed this recently about myself too. Have you tried putting up a shield or a bubble when you don't want to absorb other people's energy? It seems to work for me. OP responds, I've done it before, but I feel zero difference when I do it. Maybe it works, but I can't feel it. I don't know. I ground at home though, so it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Actually, in my opinion, it's kind of a big deal. Now, here's the thing. Do you need to shield? I actually think shields that block out other people's energy aren't the most effective way of blocking out other people's energy, mostly because they're going to make you extra tired. Because your energy is like, here, everybody, come to me. And then the shield's like, nyah. You have to hold this shield in response to that, and that sometimes creates like a conflict energetically between you being open and the shield trying to maintain the shield being closed. It just makes you more tired. However, that clearing it out very regularly, that is a really wonderful way to get other people's energy out of your space. I love how the commenters like, hey, maybe we block energy out. Maybe that'd be kind of healthy. And then OP's like, no, it doesn't. I don't feel the difference. That is one of the big concerning things for me with spirituality is like, you need to have, there's no rules here. Like I'm never going to give you rules in spirituality. I'm not, because it is an individual journey, and who am I to judge that individual journey for yourself or tell you what the fuck you should do. However, I am a big proponent of making sure you do things safely so that you don't F yourself up, and with, consideration to your mental health. This feels like a recipe of playing with fire without them actually getting the help they need to go through that. There's a couple other comments. One of the comments is, this is the reason I don't want to go to events. Too many people wanting my energy. Can you say introvert? And again, I don't necessarily even say it's necessarily an introvert. That person is probably like really energetically sensitive. And of course that's overwhelming coming in, and you don't know what that thing is, and you don't have the tools to navigate that. If you guys have questions about this too, like feel free to comment them below. I'm happy to delve into that. I do a lot of content on spiritual hygiene and making sure you're clear and grounded and shielded, which you can check out on this channel. You can check out on my TikTok, which is this liker of words. That's my TikTok. But yeah, that's the show for today. If you want to get the information about the Patreon only one, which is feeling the ring on the finger of their left hand, like literally like a ring, like that one, like that, but like on the finger that's not there. It's really interesting. So I'd love for you to head over there. Thank you guys so much for supporting it. And thank you to my Intuitive Initiate patrons, as they are the ones who get a call out, because they are the ones that really, really support me being able to create videos like this. My Intuitive Initiates. Felicity, Cassandra, Erin, Betsy, Marie, Alex, Marla, Lena, Angela, Alexandria, Danielle, and Cheryl. Thank you all so much for being in my Intuitive Initiates, my top tier, my Patreon. You guys' support is so amazing, and I appreciate you. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this fantastic journey that I'm on with this series. If you have name suggestions, again, please comment them below. Remember, you are magical as fuck. Have an incredible day. Mwah! Bye-bye!